I never thought the most dangerous person I'd ever meet would be someone I was supposed to forget existed. My name is Kaito Hayashi, and this is the story of how I fell in love with the one man my family told me never to love. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, dear viewer, so you don't miss our new uploads. My name is Kaito Hayashi, and at 27, I'd mastered the art of running away from things that mattered. My art career in Tokyo? A spectacular failure. My relationships? Even worse. So when my mother called me home to our quiet coastal town, I packed my life into 3 boxes and told myself it was a fresh start. What I didn't expect was him. Daichi Kurosawa. 35 years old. My Aunt Yuki's ex-husband. The man who, according to family gossip, had ruined everything with his workaholic tendencies and emotional unavailability. The divorce had been ugly, finalized just 8 months ago, and family gatherings had become careful dances around the topic of his name. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. The last time was at some forgettable New Year's gathering where he'd been quiet in the corner, and I'd been too absorbed in my own problems to notice much about him. Back then, he was just another face at family events, someone who existed in the periphery of my awareness. My aunt's husband. Successful architect. Polite but distant. But that first afternoon back, when I walked into the local coffee shop to escape my mother's suffocating concern, there he was. He sat alone by the window, architectural plans spread across the table, one hand holding a pencil, the other absently stirring cold coffee. The late autumn light cut across his face in sharp angles, highlighting features I didn't remember being so striking. Dark hair, slightly longer than before, falling into eyes that held something between exhaustion and determination. There was a weariness to him, but also a quiet strength, like a building that had weathered storms but refused to fall. I should have left. Should have turned around and found another cafe, another town, another life. Instead, I walked forward. Daichi? He looked up, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by something I couldn't name. Surprise? Discomfort? Or was that relief? Kaito. My name sounded different in his voice. Careful. Like he was testing the weight of it. I heard you were back. Small towns. Everyone knows everything before it happens. Yeah, I'm taking a break from Tokyo. The lie tasted bitter. Mind if I sit? I saw the hesitation. The social calculation. The awareness that this was complicated, that family politics made even coffee a minefield. But then he nodded, gathering his papers to make space, and just like that, I sat down across from the one person I was supposed to avoid. We talked for 43 minutes that first day. Nothing deep, nothing dangerous. He asked about my art, and I gave him the sanitized version, leaving out the rejection letters, the gallery that dropped me, the critic who called my work technically proficient but emotionally sterile. I asked about his work, and he told me about the community center project, his voice gaining energy as he described the design challenges, the way he wanted to create spaces that felt alive. But something happened in those 43 minutes. Something in the way he listened, really listened, like my words mattered. Something in the way his carefully controlled expression would crack just slightly when he talked about his latest project, revealing glimpses of passion beneath the professional exterior. He had beautiful hands, I noticed. Long fingers, a few small scars, the hands of someone who built things. When I left, I told myself it was a one-time thing. A chance encounter. Nothing more. I was back the next day. And the day after that. By the third week, we'd stopped pretending it was accidental. We'd started meeting intentionally, though neither of us said it out loud. Same cafe, same table by the window, same careful distance between us that felt both necessary and impossible. The barista, an elderly woman named Mrs. Tanaka, had stopped asking for our orders, just brought them automatically. Coffee for him, black. Matcha latte for me. Our conversations deepened. He told me about his childhood, growing up as the only son of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to put him through architecture school. I told him about the pressure of being the family artist, the one everyone expected to make it big, and the crushing weight of disappointing them all. "Why did you really come back?" he asked one evening, when the cafe was nearly empty and the autumn rain drummed against the windows. I'd been sketching his hands. Artist's hands, I'd told him. Good for practice. The truth was, I'd been sketching him for days, filling notebook after notebook with lines and shadows that never quite captured what I was seeing. The curve of his jaw. The way his eyes crinkled slightly when he almost smiled. The particular shade of sadness that lived in his expression. I failed, I said simply. Tokyo, the art scene, everything I thought I wanted. I failed at all of it. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers still on the coffee cup. Then, I understand that feeling. Your marriage? I shouldn't have asked. It was too direct, too personal, crossing a boundary we'd been carefully maintaining. But the words were out, hanging in the air between us like smoke. His jaw tightened. My marriage. My career. My inability to be what anyone needed me to be. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was raw. Your aunt deserved better than what I could give her. What could you give her? Nothing, apparently. Just an empty house and a husband who loved his work more than his wife. The bitterness in his voice was sharp enough to cut. At least, that's what the divorce papers said. That I was emotionally absent. That I prioritized my career over our relationship. That I was, and I quote, more married to my drafting table than to my actual wife. And was it true? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt something shift in my chest. Something dangerous and terrifying and inevitable. I don't know anymore. I loved my work because it was something I could control. Something that made sense. People are complicated. They want things I don't know how to give. They need emotional availability, vulnerability, all these things that feel like speaking a foreign language. Is that why you're sitting here with me? Because I'm simple? A ghost of a smile crossed his face, the first real smile I'd seen from him. You're the furthest thing from simple, Kaito. The way he said my name made my heart do something stupid. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about the way the lamplight had caught the silver in his hair, premature gray that made him look distinguished rather than old. The way his voice had dropped when he'd said my name. The way I'd wanted to reach across the table and touch him, just to see if he was real. No. This was wrong. This was my aunt's ex-husband. This was a man 8 years older than me, still healing from a divorce, still connected to my family in all the complicated ways that made this impossible. This was the kind of mistake I couldn't afford to make. I avoided the cafe for 5 days. On the 6th day, he showed up at my door. My mother had gone to visit my grandmother, and I was alone in the house, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the evidence of my artistic paralysis. When the doorbell rang, I almost didn't answer. But something made me get up, made me walk to the door, made me open it. He stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, rain-soaked and uncertain. His hair was plastered to his forehead, his jacket dark with water. He looked vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him before. You disappeared. I've been busy. You're a terrible liar. He paused, water dripping from his hair. Can I come in? I should have said no. Should have made up an excuse, maintained the distance I'd been trying to create. Instead, I stepped aside and let him into my life in a way that felt irreversible. He looked around at the paintings scattered everywhere, taking in the chaos of my creative process. Most were incomplete, abandoned halfway through when I'd lost faith in them. Canvases leaned against walls, sketches littered the floor, paint tubes lay uncapped on every surface. You're talented, he said, stopping in front of a canvas I'd been avoiding for weeks. It was abstract, all dark blues and deep purples, with slashes of gold that could have been light or could have been wounds. This feels raw. Honest. It's unfinished. So? Most important things are. He turned to me. You're not blocking because you lack talent, Kaito. You're blocking because you're afraid to finish. Afraid that if you complete something, it can be judged. Rejected. If you keep everything unfinished, you can always tell yourself it would have been good if you just completed it. The observation hit too close, cutting through years of excuses and self-deception. What are you doing here, Daichi? Honestly? I don't know. He ran a hand through his damp hair, sending droplets scattering. I missed talking to you. These past 5 days, I kept going to the café, expecting you to walk in. And when you didn't, I realized something. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. What? That I'm in trouble here. The admission hung between us, heavy with everything it implied. All the reasons this was impossible, all the ways we could hurt each other, all the consequences we'd face if we crossed this line. Daichi. I know this is complicated. I know your family would never forgive it. I know I'm too old for you, too broken, too much of a mess to drag you into. Stop. I moved closer, close enough to see the conflict in his eyes, the war between want and should. You don't get to decide what I want. What do you want, Kaito? The question was dangerous. Answering it would change everything, would take this from unspoken tension to undeniable reality. But standing there, looking at him, rain-soaked and vulnerable and so carefully controlled, I realized I was tired of running from things that mattered. You, I said simply. I want you. He closed his eyes like the words caused physical pain. This is a mistake. Probably. Your family isn't here right now. He opened his eyes, and what I saw there made my breath catch. Want, fear, hope, desperation, all tangled together in a way that mirrored exactly what I was feeling. If we do this, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, there's no going back. Once we cross this line, we can't uncross it. Your aunt will never forgive you. Your mother will be furious. The whole town will have opinions. And I can't promise I won't hurt you. I hurt everyone who gets close to me. I know. Your mother will hate me. Your aunt will never speak to me again. The whole town will. I kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or particularly graceful. Just a press of lips, my hand on his rain-damp jacket, his sharp intake of breath. But it felt like falling off a cliff, like every choice I'd made had been leading to this moment. He pulled back, breathing hard, his eyes wide. Kaito, we can't. We just did. And then he was kissing me back, one hand cupping my face with a gentleness that made my chest ache, the other pulling me closer. He kissed like a drowning man finding air, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. He tasted like coffee and rain and something darker, something that spoke of lonely nights and abandoned hope. We broke apart, both of us shaking. This is insane, he whispered against my mouth. I know. I'm your aunt's ex-husband. I know. I'm 8 years older than you. I can count. He laughed, and it was broken and beautiful, like something inside him was cracking open. What are we doing? I don't know. But I don't want to stop. We didn't. For the next 3 months, we existed in a secret world of stolen moments and careful lies. He'd come to my house when my mother was out, and we'd spend hours talking, kissing, mapping the geography of each other's bodies and histories. I'd go to his apartment across town, where he lived in minimalist efficiency, everything clean and ordered except for the drafting table covered in projects. He showed me his unfinished projects, the buildings he dreamed of creating. Spaces that fostered community, encouraged connection, made people feel seen. I showed him my abandoned paintings, and he'd sit there, really looking at them, pointing out strengths I'd never noticed. "You're afraid of color," he said one night, surrounded by my canvases. "What? Look at your work. It's all muted tones, safe choices." But here, he pointed to a small sketch in the corner of one painting, a burst of crimson I'd added and then tried to cover. "Here you were brave. And it's the best part of the piece. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the safe version you're trying to create. But art isn't supposed to be safe, Kaito. It's supposed to be true." Under his encouragement, I started painting differently. Bolder. More honest. Colors I'd been afraid to use. Subjects I'd been avoiding. And slowly, the block that had paralyzed me in Tokyo began to crack. But secrets have weight, and ours was getting heavier with each passing day. My mother noticed I was happier, more focused. "It's good to see you smiling again," she said one morning over breakfast, watching me hum as I prepared my coffee. "Maybe coming home was the right choice. You seem lighter." The guilt was corrosive. Every time she smiled at me, every time she talked about how proud she was that I was finding myself again, I felt like a liar. Because I was finding myself, but not in the way she thought. I was finding myself in Daichi's arms, in his bed, in the spaces between his carefully controlled words. My Aunt Yuki came to visit for my birthday in late November, and sitting across from her at dinner, I felt like a monster. She talked about her new life in Osaka, her new job at a marketing firm, the therapy that was helping her move forward. She looked lighter, happier, free from whatever had been weighing her down in her marriage. Her laugh was genuine, her eyes bright. "It's amazing what leaving a dead relationship can do for you," she said, sipping her wine. "I feel like I can breathe again. Like I'm finally myself." "Have you heard from Daichi?" my mother asked her, and I felt my entire body tense, my fork freezing halfway to my mouth. Yuki's expression hardened instantly, her smile disappearing. "No. And I hope I never do again." She looked at me, her eyes intense. "I know you probably saw him around town, Kaito. If you do, just stay away from him. That man has a way of making you think he cares, but in the end, he only cares about himself. He'll make you feel special, important, like you're the center of his world. But it's an illusion. The minute things get hard, the minute you need him, he'll disappear into his work and leave you wondering why you're not enough." I said nothing. What could I say? That I'd already fallen for exactly what she was warning me about? That I was sleeping with her ex-husband and lying to everyone about it? That night, I went to Daichi's apartment and found him sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. "Bad day?" I asked. "Bad life." He looked up at me, and his expression was haunted. "Your aunt called." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Not me. My mother. Apparently, someone saw my car near your street multiple times. Your aunt wanted to warn my family that I was stalking your area, being inappropriate." He laughed bitterly. If she only knew how right she was. I sat down next to him on the couch. "What did your mother say?" "She defended me. Told your aunt I had every right to be in that neighborhood, that I wasn't the monster your aunt made me out to be. That I was trying to rebuild my life and Yuki needed to move on." He rubbed his face. "But it's getting complicated, Kaito. People are noticing. Mrs. Tanaka at the cafe made a comment yesterday about how nice it was that I'd found a friend. But the way she said 'friend' had quotes around it. And soon, they're going to put the pieces together. Would that be so terrible?" "Yes." He turned to me, and his eyes were haunted in a way that made my chest ache. "You don't understand what this town will do to you. The whispers, the judgment, the way they'll look at you like you're something dirty and shameful. I can handle it. I've already been through the worst of their gossip during the divorce. But you? You're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. I won't let them destroy you because of me. You don't get to make that choice for me. Someone has to protect you. I don't need protection. I need you. We fought that night for the first time. Really fought, with raised voices and harsh words and all the fear we'd been suppressing. He said I was naive, that I didn't understand the consequences, that I was romanticizing something that would only end in pain. I said he was a coward, that he was using concern for me as an excuse to run away like he always did. He said he was trying to save me from a mistake I'd regret forever. I said he was the one giving up, that he was proving Yuki right about his inability to commit when things got hard. You're just like she said. I shouted. The minute things get difficult, you disappear. I'm trying to protect you from getting hurt. You're hurting me right now. The silence that followed was deafening. He stared at me, his face pale, and I saw the exact moment he realized what he was doing. The exact moment he recognized the pattern. God, he whispered. She was right. I am doing it again. I left his apartment at 2 in the morning, and we didn't speak for a week. That week was torture. I painted obsessively, finishing canvases I'd abandoned, creating new ones with a fury I didn't know I possessed. Every brushstroke was anger, longing, heartbreak, love. I painted the curve of his jaw, the sadness in his eyes, the way his hands looked when he was drawing. I painted his apartment in the darkness. I painted the cafe table where we'd met. I painted everything I couldn't say, every emotion I couldn't voice. My mother noticed. You're working like a man possessed. She had no idea how right she was. The paintings that emerged during that week were different from anything I'd created before. Raw, emotional, unafraid. The colors were bold, almost violent. The compositions were chaotic but intentional. They were the best work I'd ever done, and they were born from the worst pain I'd ever felt. On the 8th day, there was a knock on my door at midnight. I opened it to find Daichi, and one look at his face told me everything. He looked like he hadn't slept since our fight, dark circles under his eyes, his clothes rumpled. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry for trying to make your choices for you. I'm sorry for being scared. I'm sorry for proving Yuki right. I'm sorry for... I pulled him inside and kissed him until neither of us could breathe. I missed you, I whispered against his mouth. I missed you so much I thought I'd lose my mind. His hands were in my hair, his forehead pressed to mine. This past week, I kept thinking about what you said. That I was a coward. That I was running. And you were right. I've spent my whole life running from anything that scared me. My marriage failed because I couldn't be vulnerable, couldn't let Yuki in. I built walls and called it professionalism. I worked late and called it ambition. But really, I was just terrified of being seen. And here you are, offering me everything I thought I'd lost, and I'm still running. So stop running. I'm trying. But Kaito, I need you to understand something. He pulled back to look at me. If we do this, really do this, we can't hide anymore. We can't keep sneaking around. Either we're together, openly, consequences and all, or we end this now before it destroys us both. I can't keep living in this liminal space. It's killing me. That's not a choice. Yes, it is. No. I held his face in my hands, feeling the stubble, the warmth of his skin. It's not a choice because I already chose you. The first day in that cafe, the first time you said my name, every moment since then. I chose you. So the only question is, do you choose me? I watched emotions flicker across his face. Fear, hope, love, terror. The war between what he wanted and what he thought was right. Between safety and truth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he said, I choose you. We told my mother 3 days later. I'd never seen her so angry. She shouted, she cried, she called Daichi every name she could think of. Predator. Manipulator. Homewrecker. She accused him of taking advantage of me, of using me to get back at Yuki, of being sick and twisted. She said he was grooming me, even though I was 27 years old. She said he was damaged goods, that he'd already proven he couldn't maintain a relationship. Daichi stood there and took it all, his face carefully blank, absorbing every word like he agreed with all of it. I stood my ground. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Kaito? Tell me how this possibly makes sense. He was married to my sister. To your aunt. Do you understand how wrong this is? I love him. The words stopped her mid-rant. She stared at me like I'd announced I was joining a cult or moving to Mars. You, what? I love him. And he loves me. And I know it's complicated, I know it's messy, I know it's not what you want for me. But it's real, Mom. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. More real than Tokyo, more real than any relationship I've had before. He sees me in a way no one else ever has. She looked at Daichi, who'd remained silent through her entire tirade. Is this true? You love my son? Yes. His voice was steady, meeting her eyes directly. I know you have every reason to hate me. I know I failed your sister, failed at being a husband, failed at a lot of things. I know the age difference is concerning. I know the family connection makes this complicated in ways that can't be easily resolved. But I love Kaito with everything I have. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of him, trying to be better than I was, trying to be the kind of man who deserves his love. My mother sat down heavily, her anger deflating into something more like grief. This is going to break Yuki's heart. I know, I said quietly. The family is going to take sides. There will be people who never forgive you for this. Cousins who won't speak to you. Aunts and uncles who'll look at you differently. Family gatherings will never be the same. I know. You're prepared to lose all of that? For him? I looked at Daichi, at the man who'd helped me find my art again, who'd shown me what it meant to be seen, really seen. The man who was terrified of hurting me but brave enough to try. The man who challenged me, supported me, believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Yes, I said. I am. My mother was silent for a long time. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from her soul, she said, then I suppose I'll have to find a way to accept it. I don't understand it. I don't like it. But you're my son, and I won't lose you over this. But Daichi, she turned to him, her voice hardening. If you hurt him, if you break his heart the way you broke my sister's, there is nowhere in this world you can hide from me. Do you understand? I understand, he said quietly. And if I hurt him, I'll deserve whatever you do to me. It wasn't approval. It wasn't a blessing. But it was a start. Telling Yuki was harder. She came to town 2 weeks later, and we met at a neutral location, a restaurant where neither of us could make a scene. My mother had warned her that I needed to talk to her about something important. She probably thought I was moving back to Tokyo or coming out as gay, which, well, half right. She did not expect me to be dating her ex-husband. The color drained from her face when I told her. Then it came rushing back, red with fury. You're joking. I'm not. Kaito, this is sick. He's my ex-husband. She stopped, unable to finish the sentence, her hands shaking. I know who he is. Do you? Do you really? She leaned forward, her voice sharp and cutting. Do you know how he made me feel invisible? How he'd work 16-hour days and come home like I was just another piece of furniture? How he'd forget our anniversary, our plans, every promise he made? How I'd wait for him at restaurants, the food getting cold, while he lost track of time at his office. I know your marriage didn't work. It didn't work because he's incapable of loving anyone more than he loves his job. Because he's emotionally stunted and can't connect with another human being in any meaningful way. That's not true. I kept my voice calm, though my heart was racing. He's not perfect, Yuki. He knows he failed at your marriage. He owns that. But he's not the same person he was then. Because of you? She laughed bitterly, and the sound was painful to hear. You think you fixed him? You think you're special? You think you're different from me? No. I think he's been healing, and we found each other during that process. I think people can change. I think love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. This isn't love, Kaito. This is... I don't even know what this is. Infatuation? Rebellion? Some twisted way of getting back at me for something? Getting back at you? Yuki, this has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. He's my ex-husband. You're my nephew. This is a betrayal on every possible level. Her voice broke. How could you do this to me? I didn't do this to hurt you. I fell in love. That's all. With my ex-husband. With a man who makes me happy. Who sees me. Who believes in me. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw pain in her eyes. Real pain, the kind that comes from betrayal by people you trusted. This is a mistake. And when you realize that, when he hurts you the way he hurt me, don't come crying to me. Because I won't be there. I can't be. She left without finishing her meal, and I sat there feeling like the worst person in the world. Daichi found me an hour later, still at the restaurant, staring at my untouched food. That bad? He asked, sliding into the seat Yuki had vacated. She thinks I'm making a mistake. She thinks you're going to hurt me. Maybe you are. Maybe I will. I looked up at him sharply. Don't. Kaito, she's not wrong about who I was. I did all those things she said. I was a terrible husband. I was absent, emotionally unavailable, so focused on my work that I couldn't see what I was losing until it was gone. I forgot anniversaries. I canceled plans. I chose work over her again and again. Past tense, Daichi. Was. Did. You're talking about who you were, not who you are. What if that's still who I am? What if I'm just better at hiding it? What if I hurt you the same way? Is it? I challenged. Because the man I know shows up when he says he will. Listens when I talk. Remembers the small things I mention in passing. Helps me work through my creative blocks at 2 in the morning. Takes time away from his work to be with me. That man doesn't sound emotionally unavailable to me. He was quiet for a moment, his hands flat on the table. You make me want to be better. Then be better. Not for me, for you. But don't use your past as an excuse to run away from what we have. And don't let Yuki's pain dictate our present. He reached across the table, taking my hand. The gesture was simple, but in that public restaurant, it was everything. A declaration. A choice. A refusal to hide. Okay, he said. No more running. The next few months were brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. My aunt stopped speaking to me entirely, blocking my number and unfriending me on social media. Several family members took her side, viewing me as a traitor. My cousin Hannah, who I'd been close to since childhood, sent me a long message about loyalty and family and how disappointed she was in me. My uncle Taro refused to acknowledge Daichi's existence at family gatherings, looking right through him like he was invisible. The town gossip was relentless, whispers following us everywhere we went. At the grocery store, in the post office, at the doctor's office. I heard the comments, saw the stares, felt the judgment like a physical weight. Did you hear about Kaito Hayashi and his aunt's ex? It's disgusting, really. That poor woman. What kind of person does something like that? But there were unexpected allies too. Daichi's mother, surprisingly, defended us fiercely. My son is happy for the first time in years, she told anyone who would listen. That's all that matters to me. Yuki and Daichi were wrong for each other from the start. I loved her, but I watched my son disappear into that marriage, becoming smaller and smaller. Kaito brings him back to life. My younger cousin, Ren, thought the whole thing was romantic in a scandalous way. You're like Romeo and Romeo, but with more family drama, he said, which wasn't helpful but was oddly comforting. He started bringing his friends to my impromptu art showings, spreading the word about my work. And slowly, painfully, my mother came around. She saw how we were together, how Daichi looked at me like I was his entire world, how I flourished under the attention of someone who truly saw me. She saw how he'd help me set up my workspace, how he'd bring me food when I forgot to eat, how he'd sit for hours while I painted, content just to be in the same room. I still think this is complicated, she told me one evening, watching us cook dinner together in her kitchen. But I can't deny that you're happy. Happier than I've seen you in years. And he's different too. More present. More alive. I am, I said simply. Just, don't break each other, okay? You've both been through enough. 6 months after we went public, I had my first art exhibition. A small gallery in the next city over, nothing major, but it felt monumental. 20 paintings, all created during our relationship, all in some way about love, fear, courage, and truth. The owner of the gallery, a young woman named Saki, had seen my work at a local coffee shop and reached out. Every painting sold. Every single one. Daichi stood next to me at the opening, his hand on the small of my back, a gesture of support and possession that made my heart race even after all this time. He wore a suit, looking professional and handsome, and people kept asking who he was, curious about the man who'd inspired so much of my work. You did it, he whispered. We did it, I corrected. Because every painting in that gallery existed because of him. The way he'd encouraged me, pushed me, believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. The way he'd challenged me to use color, to be bold, to tell the truth. That night, in his apartment, he pulled out a folder I'd never seen before. What's this? I asked. A proposal. For the community center I've been designing. He opened it, showing me sketches and plans. Beautiful, intricate designs that showed spaces for gathering, creating, connecting. I want to include an art studio. A place for local artists to work, create, show their pieces. A place where people like you can find support and community. And I want you to help me design it. I stared at the drawings, at the careful way he'd incorporated space for creativity, for light, for inspiration. At the way he'd thought about sight lines and natural lighting and display spaces. You want me to work with you? I want to build something with you. Not just buildings or art, but a life. A real one, where we don't have to hide or apologize or justify ourselves. Where we can create things that matter, that help people, that leave the world better than we found it. I looked at him, at this man who'd come into my life like a storm and changed everything. Who'd shown me that love wasn't always simple or easy, but it was always worth it. Yes, I said. Let's build something. The community center took a year to complete. We worked on it together, me designing the art studio, him incorporating my vision into his architectural plans. We argued about wall colors and lighting fixtures and floor plans. We compromised and collaborated and created something better than either of us could have made alone. The opening was bittersweet. My Aunt Yuki didn't come, of course. Neither did several other family members. But my mother was there, proud and supportive. Daichi's mother came, crying happy tears. And to my surprise, some family members I hadn't expected showed up. My cousin Ren brought his entire friend group. My grandmother came, the matriarch of our family, who everyone had assumed would disown me. She walked slowly through the space, examining every detail, and then found me and Daichi standing together. It's beautiful, she said simply. Then she looked at Daichi. You've done good work here. Both of you. It wasn't forgiveness for everyone, but it was acknowledgement. And in that moment, it felt like enough. The art studio became exactly what we'd hoped. Local artists started using the space, creating, teaching, sharing their work. I taught weekly classes, helping people find their creative voice. Daichi would sometimes sit in on the sessions, sketching architectural ideas while I guided students through their artistic blocks. One evening, about 18 months into our relationship, we were cleaning up after a particularly successful class when Daichi stopped what he was doing and just looked at me. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. I'm not afraid anymore, he said. Of what? Of this. Of us. Of loving you. He set down the brushes he'd been organizing. For so long, I was terrified that I'd hurt you like I hurt Yuki. That I'd fall back into old patterns. That I'd choose work over you, that I'd emotionally withdraw, that I'd prove everyone right about me being incapable of real connection. And now? Now I realize I was so focused on not repeating the past that I wasn't fully living in the present. Yes, I work hard. But I also know when to stop. I know when you need me. I know how to be present in a way I never learned before. You didn't fix me, Kaito. But loving you taught me how to fix myself. I crossed the room to him, paint still on my hands, and kissed him softly. You taught me something too. What's that? That sometimes the best art comes from breaking the rules. That the most beautiful things are often the most unexpected. That love doesn't have to look the way everyone expects it to. We stood there in the studio we built together, surrounded by the evidence of creativity and collaboration, and I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the certainty that this was right, no matter what anyone else thought. 2 years after we went public, my Aunt Yuki reached out. The email was short, formal, careful. She was coming to town for a wedding and wondered if I'd be willing to meet for coffee. No pressure, she said. She'd understand if I declined. I showed the email to Daichi. What do you think? I think that's your decision, he said. But for what it's worth, closure can be valuable. For both of you. I met her at a different café, not the one where Daichi and I had first reconnected. Neutral territory. She arrived exactly on time, looking professional in a gray suit, her hair shorter than I remembered. We were awkward at first, dancing around the real conversation with small talk about her job, my art, the weather. But eventually, inevitably, we had to address it. I was angry for a long time, she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Furious, actually. It felt like a betrayal on every level. My nephew and my ex-husband. It was like losing both of you at once. I'm sorry I hurt you. Are you? She looked at me directly. Because you don't seem sorry you're with him. Just sorry that it hurt me. I thought about lying, about softening it. But Yuki deserved honesty. You're right. I'm not sorry I'm with Daichi. I'm sorry the circumstances hurt you. I'm sorry the timing was terrible. I'm sorry for the pain it caused. But I'm not sorry I love him. She was quiet for a long moment. That's fair, I suppose. More honest than I expected. Yuki, can I ask you something? And I want you to be honest too. Okay. When you think about your marriage to Daichi, setting aside everything that happened with me, do you really think it would have worked? Long term? She didn't answer immediately, and I watched emotions play across her face. Finally, she said, no. Probably not. We were wrong for each other from the start, but neither of us wanted to admit it. I needed someone emotionally available, expressive, present. He needed someone who understood his work obsession, who could be okay with solitude. We kept trying to change each other instead of accepting that we were fundamentally incompatible. Does it help at all to know that he's different now? That he's learned from what happened? Honestly? A little. But it also makes it harder in some ways. Because it makes me wonder if he could have been that person for me if I'd just been more patient, or done something differently. You couldn't have, I said gently. He had to get there himself. And sometimes people need to break completely before they can rebuild. Is that what you think you did? Helped him rebuild? No. I think he rebuilt himself. I just happened to be there when he was ready for something different. Yuki took a sip of her coffee, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. I've been in therapy, working through a lot of things. And my therapist asked me something interesting. She asked why I was so angry at you specifically. And I realized it wasn't just about the betrayal. It was because you get to have the version of him I always wanted. The one who's present, who makes time, who's emotionally available. That hurt more than the relationship itself. I understand that. But here's what I've come to realize, that version of Daichi might not have existed without the failure of our marriage. Without hitting rock bottom. Without learning what it cost him to be emotionally unavailable. So in a twisted way, you benefited from my pain. And that's hard to accept, but it's also, just life, I guess. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for your apology or your gratitude. I'm just trying to move forward. And part of that means acknowledging reality instead of the story I've been telling myself. What story? That Daichi was a villain and I was a victim. That he ruined everything and I was blameless. But the truth is messier. We were both responsible for the failure of our marriage. We both made mistakes. We both could have tried harder, communicated better, been more honest about our needs. We talked for another hour, carefully rebuilding a bridge that had been burned. It wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was something. An acknowledgement that relationships are complicated, that hurt and healing aren't mutually exclusive, that families can fracture and still find new shapes. When we parted, she said, I don't know if I can come to family events if he's there. Not yet. But maybe someday. That's fair. Take care of yourself, Kaito. And for what it's worth, your art really is beautiful. I saw some pieces online from your exhibition. You found your voice. Thank you. That means a lot. I told Daichi about the conversation that night. We were in bed, the comfortable intimacy of two people who'd learned each other's rhythms and preferences. How do you feel? He asked. Lighter, somehow. Like I've been carrying around this weight of her anger, and now it's a little less heavy. I'm glad you met with her. Are you? It can't be easy hearing about your ex-wife, knowing she's still processing everything. It's not easy, exactly. But it's necessary. She deserved to be heard, and so did you. And honestly, I'm grateful she's in therapy, that she's working through things. I carry guilt about our marriage every day. You shouldn't. It takes two people to make a relationship work or fail. I know. But knowing and feeling are different things. He pulled me closer. Loving you has taught me that, actually. How to separate rational knowledge from emotional truth. How to sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of working myself to death to avoid them. 3 years into our relationship, on a quiet spring evening, Daichi asked me to marry him. We were at the beach, the same one I used to come to as a child, where the sunset turned everything gold. He'd planned it carefully, I realized later, but in the moment it felt spontaneous and perfect. I know it's complicated, he said, down on one knee in the sand. I know some of your family still won't approve. I know people will have opinions. But Kaito, you've taught me what it means to really show up for someone. To be present, vulnerable, honest. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing up for you. The ring was simple, elegant, exactly my style. I said yes before he finished asking. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the community center we'd built together. My mother cried happy tears. Daichi's mother gave a speech about second chances and unexpected joy. My cousin Ren was my best man, taking the role with inappropriate enthusiasm and a speech that made everyone laugh. Yuki didn't come, but she sent a card. It said simply, "Wishing you both happiness." Why? It was enough. The years that followed were ordinary in the best possible way. We built a life together, full of work and art and quiet evenings at home. I established myself as an artist, having regular exhibitions, teaching more classes, finally making a living doing what I loved. Daichi took on fewer projects but invested more deeply in each one, creating spaces that genuinely served communities. We traveled together, exploring cities and architecture and art. We bought a house with good light for my studio and a home office for his drafting table. We adopted a dog, a ridiculous golden retriever named Momo who had no sense of personal space and too much energy. We had hard days, of course. Days when old patterns threatened to resurface, when Daichi would get too absorbed in work, when I would retreat into insecurity. But we'd learned how to recognize those moments, how to call them out, how to course correct before they became real problems. "I'm disappearing into this project," he'd say. "Pull me back." "I'm spiraling about the gallery rejection," I'd admit. "Tell me it's okay." We learned the language of each other's wounds and how to speak it with kindness. 5 years after we got together, we were invited to speak at a local LGBTQ+ center about our relationship. The organizers said they wanted diverse stories, including complicated ones, to show young people that love comes in many forms. I was nervous, unsure what to say. But standing there, looking out at the crowd of young faces, I found the words. "Our story isn't a fairy tale," I said. "It started in a way that hurt people we loved. It required sacrifice and difficult conversations and facing judgment. But it's real. And it taught me that sometimes the right choice isn't the easy one, or the one that makes everyone happy. Sometimes the right choice is the one that's truest to who you are and what you need." Daichi spoke about learning to be vulnerable, about second chances, about the difference between the person you are and the person you can become. Afterward, a young man approached us, maybe 19 or 20. "Thank you for sharing your story," he said. "I'm in a complicated situation too. Someone I shouldn't love but can't help loving. And hearing that you made it through gives me hope. Just make sure it's worth it," I told him. "Make sure the love is real, not just the thrill of breaking rules. Because the consequences are real too." "How do you know the difference?" I looked at Daichi, who smiled at me with all the tenderness we'd built over 5 years together. "You know it's real when it makes you a better person. When it challenges you to grow. When it's worth every difficult conversation and every sacrifice." People ask me sometimes if I regret it. If I regret falling in love with my aunt's ex-husband, if I regret the family fractures, the gossip, the complications. If I regret choosing a path that was harder than it needed to be. The answer is always the same: no. Never. Not even for a moment. Because Daichi taught me something my years in Tokyo never could. He taught me that art isn't about perfection. It's about truth. About capturing the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being alive. About having the courage to put your real self on the canvas, not the version you think people want to see. And our love? It's the most honest thing I've ever created. We still have hard days. Days when my aunt's silence feels like a physical weight, even after years. Days when Daichi's past demons surface and I have to remind him that he's worthy of being loved. Days when I wonder if we made everything too complicated, if there was an easier path we could have taken. But then I look at him, really look at him, across our kitchen table or in his home office or standing in the art studio we built together. And I remember that afternoon in the cafe when I chose to sit down instead of walk away. I remember choosing him, over and over and over again. And I'd make that choice 1,000 times more. Because love, real love, isn't about perfection. It's not about easy choices or simple paths. It's not about making everyone happy or following all the rules. Real love is about finding someone who sees you completely and chooses you anyway. Someone who challenges you to be better while loving you exactly as you are. Someone worth fighting for, even when the fight is hard. 7 years after that first afternoon in the cafe, I'm standing in our home studio, working on a new series of paintings. Daichi's at his drafting table nearby, working on plans for a youth center. Momo is sprawled across both our feet, snoring loudly. And I realize something: this is what I was searching for in Tokyo. Not fame or recognition or validation from galleries. But this. This quiet, ordinary, extraordinary life. This partnership. This love. The morning light catches the ring on my finger, and I think about how far we've come. About the fear and courage it took to get here. About the people we've hurt and the people who've supported us. About the family we've lost and the family we've built. What are you thinking about? Daichi asks, noticing I've stopped painting. That I never thought the most dangerous person I'd ever meet would be someone I was supposed to forget existed. He smiles, understanding immediately. Dangerous? Dangerous to my carefully constructed walls. To my excuses. To my fear of being truly seen. He gets up and crosses to me, wrapping his arms around me from behind, his chin on my shoulder. And now? Now I'm glad I was never very good at following rules. We stand there together, in the life we've built, in the love we've fought for, in the truth we've learned to live. And it's beautiful. Messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but beautiful. Sometimes the most unexpected love stories are the ones that change us the most. Not because they're easy, but because they're real. Because they ask us to be brave enough to choose truth over comfort, love over convention, and growth over safety. Because they remind us that the heart doesn't always follow the rules we set for it, and sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most complicated packages.
Hit the subscribe button for more enchanting tales every week. Don't forget to keep the magic alive.